just shows how right they were to be demanding this.
Project lead Amna Mackin and Premier Wab Canoe enter the Manitoba legislature moments after returning from the Prairie Green landfill.
We found some items which indicate that we are in the right date range and time.
December 2nd marked the first day of the physical search of the Prairie Green landfill, the province calling this phase 4 of 5. In October, during Phase 3, just over 18,000 tons of waste was moved from above the area currently being searched. It was on May 16, 2022, the bodies of Morgan Harris and Marcedes Myran were believed to have been brought here after having sat in garbage bins for 2 weeks outside these businesses within a couple blocks of the apartment of Jeremy Skibitsky. He was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years this past summer for killing Harris, Myran, Rebecca Contois, and the unidentified person given the name Buffalo Woman. While the killings were done in May 2022, it wasn't until December 1st of that year when the Harris and Myran families were visited by Winnipeg police. They were told what happened to the two women and that a search of the site wasn't feasible, which turned into a year-long political fight to search the landfill.
Yesterday, on exactly the 2-year anniversary of that, we returned to the site with both the Harris and the Myran families, and we stood with them in ceremony. And this morning, I was there with 2 family members as we watched that first blue truck of landfill material come down to the search facility. And it is an intense emotion that you feel.
Mackin says while the trucks transport the material, it's the search teams that separate land from waste using rakes and their hands.
A team of 12 search technicians and their team leader will spread materials out a little bit further and look for any materials of interest.
In total, there are 3 teams of searchers that rotate shift work 6 days a week. The province says the project continues to remain on schedule and on budget.
It's also important to know that within a landfill, because of the compaction, it creates an anaerobic state, so things don't typically decompose. So we are expecting that if we do find remains, there may be a possibility of soft tissue still intact as well.
Words that echo what the families have said all along as they fought to get this search, all while grieving their loved ones in the public eye. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg. Camp Morgan, on its 2nd anniversary from when it first began, will put its fire out and shut down for good. It was set up near the city-owned Brady landfill on the south side of Winnipeg on December 18, 2022. Just weeks after Winnipeg police announced Jeremy Skibitsky, who was already in custody for the murder of Rebecca Contois, was also being charged for killing Morgan Harris, Marcedes Myran, and the yet-to-be-identified person given the name Buffalo Woman. Camp Morgan, of course, began as a response to Winnipeg police telling the families the remains of Harris and Myran ended up at the privately owned Prairie Green landfill north of the city, but a search was not feasible. Organizers committed to keeping the camp going until a search happened. After a 15-month political fight, both the federal and provincial governments committed a combined $40 million towards a search. Earlier this month, the physical search of the landfill began. In a Facebook post, Morgan's cousin Melissa Robinson said, quote, "It's only a matter of time now till we are able to bring Morgan home and lay her to rest properly," unquote. Meanwhile, Harris's daughter, Elle Harris, along with 2 other women, Robin Johnston and Susan Caribou, have filed a human rights complaint of discrimination against the city of Winnipeg for not conducting a search of both the Prairie Green and Brady landfills. The complaint says the city discriminated against Morgan Harris, Buffalo Woman, Tanya Nepanak, and all Indigenous women, girls, 2S LGBTQIA+ people and their families. Nepanak is believed to also be a victim of homicide. In 2012, Sean Lamb was charged in her murder, but the charges were stayed due to lack of evidence. The complaint has 18 reference points the city ignored, including, quote, "on the basis of our ancestry and sex without bona fide and reasonable cause," unquote. The city violated Section 13 of the Human Rights Code. So far, there has been no response from the city. This past August, the man responsible for Harris and the other 3 women's deaths was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for first-degree murder. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
According to the province of Manitoba, the RCMP has now initiated a found human remains investigation at the Prairie Green landfill, and steps for identification are underway. The families of Morgan Harris and Marcedes Myran have been notified of the development and have attended the site. Harris and Myran are among the victims of a Winnipeg serial killer convicted of killing 4 First Nations women in the city in 2022. The remains of Rebecca Contois were discovered in June of 2022 at a city-owned landfill south of the city. The whereabouts of a 4th victim, known only as Buffalo Woman, is still unknown. Excavation at the Prairie Green landfill began in December of 2024. APTN News will continue to follow this developing story. It is believed that the remains of Morgan Harris and Marcedes Myran, both from the Long Plain First Nation, ended up in the landfill sometime in May of 2022. They are 2 of the 4 women murdered by self-confessed serial killer Jeremy Skibitsky. Skibitsky was sentenced in August of last year and will serve a life sentence with no chance of parole for 25 years. Back in 2022, the families were told by the Winnipeg police they would not search the landfill for their loved ones, prompting a year-long political fight with the previous Manitoba government. Last summer, both the federal and Manitoba governments committed $20 million each for the search. In December, the physical search of the site began. This week, the families were told about the possibility of remains being found. The RCMP and the province's chief medical examiner are now investigating. Premier Wab Kinew has also said that the identification process could take up to 2 weeks. The family spoke at a press conference this morning.
I was thinking back to when we were all told no, right? When the Winnipeg police told us no. You know, when the government, Heather Stephenson, told us no. You know, that couldn't be done and that it wouldn't be done. You know what, to hell with all you guys, because it got done. You know, and it's just beginning.
I didn't see myself making it too far in life after I found out about my mom, because I just turned 18. I just became an adult without my mother. And yesterday, all I could think about was I want my mom. No one should go through any type of heartbreak without their mom. Yesterday, when I left the landfill, I felt like I was abandoning her again. I felt like I was leaving her. No family, no person should go through what we went through. And again, to every one of you that said no, to every one of you that didn't believe in us, do better.
It's damaged us internally.
In 4 words, Melissa Robinson sums up the past 26 months since her cousin was killed. In December 2022, the families of Morgan Harris and Marcedes Myran were told their loved ones were brutally murdered and their remains ended up in the Prairie Green landfill. To add to their pain, the Winnipeg Police Service told them there would not be a search.
We were constantly told no because it couldn't be done, or, you know, it was like looking for a needle in a haystack. But here we are, less than 3 months of the search commencing, and already, you know, remains have been found.
A physical search of the landfill began on December 2nd, 2024, almost 2 years to the day the families heard the 2 women were victims of a self-confessed serial killer. This past August, Jeremy Skibitsky was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years for killing 4 women. Rebecca Contois, Harris, Myran, and the yet-to-be-identified person given the name Buffalo Woman. The same summer, after fighting a year-long political fight with the city, its police, along with the former Manitoba government and multiple feasible studies later, the families were told the feds and province would commit $20 million each to the search. A search that has close to 40 people doing shift work. Many of them are family members of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in this province. Earlier this week, the Harris and Myran families were called to the search site with news of potential remains being found. Jordan Myran is Marcedes' sister.
We knew those women were in there, and this is the day that we've been waiting for. Although it's a good thing that we found the remains, it's also very, very hard.
Morgan's youngest daughter, Elle Harris, shares how she felt leaving the search site.
Yesterday when I left the landfill, I felt like I was abandoning her again. I felt like I was leaving her.
This isn't the first time Winnipeg experienced a serial killer preying on Indigenous women. In 2012, Sean Lamb pleaded guilty to killing 2 women, and charges were stayed on a third, Tanya Neepanak, because her body was never recovered. At the time, her family was told that she was likely in the Brady landfill, a city-owned one on the south perimeter of Winnipeg. They were told she would not be searched for, something that's lingered in the air for over a decade and on the minds of the families today.
We need to go back to Brady, where we know Tanya Neepanak is at. You know, again, I don't know how anyone sleeps at nighttime knowing that she still lays there, and we know she's there. You know, so why hasn't the work begun over there as well?
Kyra Wilson is the Grand Chief for the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs and was the Chief of Long Plain at the time the women were murdered. For her, if a search happened back then, there could have been prevention policies in place.
Right now is a prime example. If you listen to us, how many years ago, this could have been prevented.
She says with the alarming rates of violence on Indigenous women and girls, action needs to start now.
A major reason why we need to look at systemic change, and it needs to happen immediately. And we can't ignore this crisis anymore.
Meanwhile, the RCMP and the province's chief medical examiner are now investigating what was found this week. The province says the identification process could take up to 2 weeks. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Previously, former Premier Heather Stefanson declined to search the landfill for the remains of two of four Indigenous women who were killed by a Winnipeg serial killer in May of 2022. Initially, the PCs said the search was too dangerous and not feasible. Stefanson even campaigned during the 2023 provincial election with political ads to stand firm against searching the Prairie Green landfill. In the legislature this week, the PC's interim leader, Wayne Iwasko, said the party acted without empathy and lost its way in providing closure to the families. Cambria Harris, the oldest daughter of Morgan Harris, took to social media with questions around why the PC party didn't meet with the families first.
The government didn't make just an error, like they want to say. You know, they caused the catastrophe. They caused the divide. They tore apart a nation and a community and caused severe amounts of emotional distress to many, many people. To the point where it made others comfortable to come out and spew full-on white supremacy and racist comments against victims' families, but also Indigenous people going forward, not only in Winnipeg, but across Canada. So it's not just about an apology, it's about taking accountability for what you did and what errors you created and how you're going to change that.
The search inside the Prairie Green landfill for the remains of Morgan Harris and Marcedes Myran continues while the RCMP and the province's chief medical examiner work to identify the possible remains that were found here. All the while, people in this province continue to process the information, including the former Manitoba government, who initially refused to search the landfill.
Our government erred. It's as simple as that.
In session, the interim Progressive Conservative leader Wayne Iwasko said his party acted without empathy and lost its way in providing closure to the families.
I offer today our unconditional apology to the families.
Rebecca Contois, Harris, Myran, and yet to be identified Buffalo woman were all brutally murdered by Jeremy Skibitsky in spring 2022. Last August, he was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years. Court revealed Harris and Myran ended up in the Prairie Green. In 2023, a provincial election campaign for the PC government focused on political ads standing firm against the search, with former Premier Heather Stefanson saying it was too costly and too dangerous.
We will, as Elle Harris requested, be better as a party.
That's my mom in there.
Morgan's youngest daughter, Elle Harris, gave a gut-wrenching speech the day after possible remains were found, boldly challenging the previous government, the city of Winnipeg and its police, along with naysaying Manitobans.
To every one of you that didn't believe in us, do better.
With the PC apology, Cambria Harris, Morgan's oldest, took to social media on Wednesday, talking about the emotional turmoil her family is still facing.
To the point where it made others comfortable to come out and spew full-on white supremacy and racist comments.
Even saying this latest move is the party wanting to save face.
Why are you apologizing publicly when you had a chance to mediate and meet with my family privately on numerous occasions? So unless your actions want to prove me otherwise, anything that you are saying right now is mere words. And that is all I have been served the last 2 years from all levels of government.
In December, after a 2-year fight by the families, the physical search began and is being led by the current NDP government. In session, Premier Wab Kinew taking the chance to also share words with the PCs.
The project of searching the landfill was always feasible, was always something that could have been undertaken by a government with compassion.
The PCs weren't the only ones to refuse to help to get the search going. The Winnipeg police also said no and have not apologized. However, in a statement late last week, the acting police chief said, quote, "Our thoughts go out to the families who are awaiting word on their missing loved ones," unquote. Meanwhile, the results of the identity aren't expected until later this month. Tiara Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg. It's because of the persistence of Morgan Harris and Marcedes Myran's families rallying together, knocking on many doors, including the city, its police service, the provincial and federal governments repeatedly to get the search going in the first place, even dealing with an entire 2023 political election campaign by the former progressive conservative government who stood firm on not searching the Prairie Green landfill, causing a divide and bringing out the worst in some Manitobans.
Just shows how right they were to be demanding this.
Over the weekend, Premier Wab Kinew told reporters RCMP confirmed the remains recovered on February 26 are those of Morgan Beatrice Harris.
However they want to remember her has been on hold and disrupted and made the subject of so much public scrutiny. But now, as any of us would want, they'll be able to pay tribute to her in a way that will help them move on with their lives. And I really, really hope and pray that we'll be able to have the Myran family in the same situation very soon.
The province says a second set of remains were also recovered and have been sent for DNA testing. In spring 2022, Rebecca Contois, Harris, Myran, and the yet-to-be-identified person given the name Marcedes Myran, or Buffalo Woman, were all brutally murdered by serial killer Jeremy Skibitsky, who is now serving a life sentence. Initially, Contois' partial remains were the only ones discovered in bins behind his apartment, which eventually led to the killer admitting to the others. Buffalo Woman is believed to have been murdered in March 2022. The trial revealed WPS don't know where her remains ended up, as there is also another landfill on the south side of the city.
We're all thinking of Marcedes Myran. I honor her dignity and personhood, the same way that we've honored Morgan and Marcedes. And working on the search, it's very affirming process to just realize again in a very direct way awful nature of these crimes.
But last fall, Morgan's cousin Melissa Robinson believed they could find someone else entirely.
When you look at the numbers of our MMIWG2S just here alone in our city, I'm almost certain, and I'm sure most of you know as well, that we're certainly going to be finding more than just whom we're going in looking for.
Meanwhile, the Winnipeg Police Service, who originally said a search was not feasible, are starting off this week by swearing in a new police chief. In a statement, incoming Chief Gene Bowers said WPS are thinking of the families, also saying how the case has shaped how he wants to build the service's relationship with Indigenous peoples. Quote, "I intend to action my vision for the Winnipeg Police Service to become leaders in reconciliation," unquote, also noting he hopes to meet with the families to help develop his vision. The new police chief isn't the only one thinking of the families right now. Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Gary Ananda Sangari sharing some words on social media saying that no family should have to endure this pain. Indigenous leadership have also congratulated the families for pushing for the search and have asked to give the families space so they can now start to grieve privately. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
The remains of Marcedes Myran have been officially identified after being found in late February in the Prairie Green landfill north of Winnipeg. Myran and Morgan Harris, whose remains were identified in early March, can now be properly put to rest by loved ones almost 3 years since they disappeared.
Marcedes Myran and Morgan Harris are coming home. This is what we set out to do. I don't know if many of us knew the odds of success. I certainly was always trying to keep a realistic perspective, but it turns out bringing them home was within our grasp.
Myran, 26, and Harris, 39, were 2 of 4 confirmed victims of a convicted Winnipeg serial killer. Myran and Harris were both members of Long Plain First Nation. Their murders took place between March and May 2022. The remains of another victim, Rebecca Contois, were found in June 2022 in the Brady Road landfill south of Winnipeg. The remains of a 4th, yet-to-be-identified victim, named by the Indigenous community as Mashkede Bijiki Ikwe, or Buffalo Woman, have still not been found. It took roughly 2 years for the landfill search to begin after Winnipeg Police Services said they believed Harris and Myran's remains were at the site in December 2022. However, the Winnipeg Police Services refused to enact a search, and the previous provincial government campaigned against the effort, both citing health concerns related to asbestos. Throughout that time, the women's families and their community endlessly advocated for the search.
Until we get her home, we'll be fighting to bring her home. Like I said, even a piece of her would be good. We'll have a piece of her at home at least.
We're not asking, we are telling you that this needs to be done. You will search the landfill, and if you will not, you will hand me the shovel and you will hand me the hazmat suits myself, and our community will go in there and retrieve our woman.
It took about 3 months for the 2 women to be found from the time the physical search began in December 2024. Morgan Harris's daughter Elle says the pain of waiting and advocating was unnecessary for the families. She took to Facebook to share her thoughts on Myran being found. There was absolutely no need for all this trauma that was induced, for all the exhaustion, for all the constant fighting and pleading to bring my mother and Marcedes home. We did not have to endure all this pain if they just listened to us in the first place instead of tearing us down every step and every second of the way. Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew says the search will continue and says remains and other things that are significant are continuing to be found. Kinew hopes the findings bring unity to a province somewhat divided on the search.
And I hope now, regardless of how you felt over the course of this thing, I hope we can all just agree it's good that we're able to provide closure to these families so that they can move forward in a good way. And now the rest of the province, neighbors included, ought to be able to move forward together.
Sav Jonesa, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew told a room full of reporters the Brady Road landfill search for Ashlee Shingoose is expected to start in December, saying the process will resemble a search that was done this past year for 2 other women who were also killed by the same serial killer as Ashlee. The Shingoose family welcomed the Premier to their home in the St. Teresa Anishinaabe Nation for a sweat lodge ceremony earlier this month. Albert and Teresa wanted to start the physical search of the Brady landfill for their daughter Ashlee off in a good way. Kinew says he was grateful for the moving ceremony.
So now we're moving ahead to the next steps, which involve hiring the searchers. We've done sort of our preliminary test search already. This is very much the same process we used at Prairie Green landfill, and now we're just doing it at Brady. And because we're there, the City of Winnipeg has been great. Winnipeg Police Service have been great about collaborating with us.
In 2022, Rebecca Contois, Morgan Harris, Marcedes Myran, and Ashlee Shingoose were brutally murdered. Their serial killer is serving a concurrent life sentence for first-degree murder ×4. Harris and Myran's remains ended up at a privately owned Prairie Green landfill. Last December, the province began searching, and after only 3 months, some remains from both were found. Shingoose was killed a couple months before the others, and her remains ended up at Brady Road. She went unidentified for 3 years. Even during the trial, she was only known as Buffalo Woman. It was months after the killer went to prison that police went back to interview him, which gave the police more evidence to identify Shingoose. Kinu says with the work at Prairie Green now completed, they have begun moving equipment to Brady landfill.
We've been doing the decommissioning activities, so it might look like there's activities on site, but it's not related to the search per se. It's because we had buildings there that were moving to Brady, trailers that were being moved to other locations, things like that.
This mobile home was placed near Prairie Green for a safe space for the Harris and Myran families to go to during the search. It may move to Brady Road, but it may also serve another purpose. Melissa Robinson is Harris's cousin.
We wanted to ensure that it was going to be fair, and we liked the idea of giving it to an organization maybe that could use it for our unsheltered women, our women at risk.
She now works with the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, helping other families in need. And just last week, Harris's daughter, Cambria Harris, began working for the province.
Cambria's a rock star.
She is currently the special assistant to the finance minister with a focus on reconciliation.
She showed poise, intelligence, moral courage, and I just think this is a great Manitoban that we have, and hopefully over her time working with us in government, we'll be able to build her up for the next stage of her career and the next stage of contributions to public life in Canada.
The fact that political spaces are hiring people with lived experiences is a good thing, says Robinson.
In looking at doing these types of roles, you need to have people that are impacted. People, sadly, that know that hurt, that know that loss.
The Brady Road landfill search for Ashlee is also expected to include searching for Tanya Nepanak. She went missing in 2011. A different killer was charged in 2012 for her disappearance and murder, but those charges were stayed. Back then, Winnipeg police only searched for a week and were not successful. As of right now, though, the province isn't saying much about what the search for Tanya will look like. TR Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
The 30-year-old mother of 3 was murdered in March 2022 by a man targeting First Nation women at shelters in central Winnipeg. Shingoose was from St. Teresa Point Anishinaabe Nation in northern Manitoba. She was named Mushkade Bijiki Ekwe, or Buffalo Woman, by Indigenous community members while her identity remained unconfirmed for 3 years. DNA found confirmed her identity in March of this year. Another victim, Rebecca Contois, was the first of the 4 women to be found when her remains were uncovered in the Brady Road landfill in June 2022. The Prairie Green landfill search for Morgan Harris and Marcedes Myran yielded results around 3 months after it began this time last year.